Welcome to the Clear Creek Cardigan. We are going to start by getting the projector set up. So my 1-inch grid is turned on and I'm just going to make sure that it matches my mat. So everything looks good. I'm going to turn my grid layer off and I'm going to turn my keep selected layer back on. Now I'm ready to cut my fabric out. Here are our required pieces. We have one back, we have two fronts, and those pieces are mirrored. So one of them has the stripes, one of them has the stars. We have one waistband, two cuffs, two sleeves, and one neckband. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fronts and I'm going to lay them right sides together with my back, and I'm going to line up the shoulder seam. I'm also going to take my cuffs and fold them right sides together, and at this point you could sew them just like that, or you could fold them one more time. Doing it that way makes the seam a little less bulky. So I folded the cuffs in both the ways I talked about to show you what they would look like. Now we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we will sew our shoulder seams and we will sew our cuffs. Here we are at the serger and I'm going to sew my cuffs and my shoulder seams. So this is the double folded cuff. And the way this one works is that you just, under one piece of the fabric, okay, so you have three on the one side and then the one, then you turn it out like this. So that's how that works. It makes this seam a little less bulky. I have to cut that tail off though, so I gotta turn it right side out, or inside out, excuse me. This is the other cuff where it's only folded the once. So with this style, then we're just going to fold it wrong sides together like this. Either way you sew it is totally fine. It's just up to your personal preference. So there's one cuff. And here's our second cuff. So now for our shoulder seams. Next, we'll fold and press the short ends of the neckband to the wrong side 1/4 inch, and then we will sew it in place using a straight stitch. So my foot goes down. I've got my needle set to the down position so that when I stop, it's down. I'm gonna hold my tails. There's no need to backstitch this part because it will be captured when we sew it to the cardigan. Next, we will fold the neckband in half with the wrong sides together. Give it a good press and then fold it in half one more time to find the center back. Next, we'll sew the sleeves on. Start by opening your cardigan up and then making sure that the shoulder seams are towards the back of the cardigan. Fold your sleeve in half to find the center. Mark the center with a pin or clip. Next, take your sleeve and lay it on top of the cardigan, right sides together, matching up the mark you made on your sleeve with the shoulder seam. When we go over to the sewing machine to sew it, we'll take the corner of the sleeve and we'll line it up to the corner of the cardigan and we'll start sewing, gently stretching just the sleeve as needed till we get to the shoulder seam. Make sure the shoulder seam is still towards the back of the cardigan. We'll remove the pin or clip and then we'll continue to sew down to the other corner. Here we are at the serger and we're going to sew the sleeves on. So this is the sleeve that I had clipped in place. And I'm taking this corner that I talked about and I'm lining it up with the corner on the cardigan. I will sew a few stitches and then I'm going to readjust my sleeve. Right now I'm holding the sleeve where I took the clip out. I know it has to go to this seam right here. So this allows me to make sure that I'm not overstretching it or understretching it and it ends up where it needs to be. Now I'm going to take the corner from the other side of the sleeve and the corner from the other side of the cardigan. I'm going to line them up. And I'm going to adjust the fabric. Now I could take my cardigan back over to the table and lay it flat like I did before to attach the other sleeve, but I've already got it marked. I know that this mark here is going to go here and that they need to be right sides together and my shoulder seam needs to be towards the back. So I'm just going to do that right now because it saves a little time. I'm going to find the corner of my cardigan right there. Raise my foot. Here's the corner of my sleeve. Line them up. And then I'm going to remove this clip and I'm going to hold that spot. And then I'm going to manipulate the fabric as needed. Okay, now I'm going to find this corner, bring them together. Manipulate my fabric so the raw edges are aligned. go back over to the table. We're going to sew the side seams next, and to do that we need to fold our cardigan in half and line up those side seams. So you're going to want to fold it so that the sleeves are right sides together. That helps you to kind of see that you're folding it properly, because there's a lot of pieces here. So if you remember to fold the sleeve in half like you did when you found the center mark, then you will have no problem. So now we're going to go back over to the serger, and we will sew from the sleeve to the armpit and then down to the bottom of the cardigan. Let's sew our side seams. I'm going to start with the sleeve here, and I prefer to sew from the sleeve down. Next, we're going to attach the waistband. So first, fold your cardigan in half, lining up those side seams to find the center back, and mark that with a pin or a clip. Next, take your waistband and fold it in half, wrong sides together, and then give it a good press, and then fold it in half again and mark the center. Now we'll open the cardigan and the waistband up, and we will pin the waistband to the right side of the cardigan, and I'm going to start with that center back spot. Next, I'll clip the sides of the waistband to the front center on each side. Now let's take it over to the sewing machine and sew it on. I'll be using my serger. Let's sew the waistband on. I'm just going to line this up, slide it under my foot, and sew from here all the way to the other side. When I get to the side seams, I'd like them to be towards the center back. Now that your waistband is sewn on, give it another good press and press the seam up. Now we're going to move on to doing the cuffs for the sleeve. So when we sewed the cuff, we've already turned them wrong sides together, but if you haven't done that yet, do that now. And then we're going to take and we're going to insert the cuff into the sleeve so that they're right sides together, and we're going to line up the seam of the cuff with the seam of the sleeve, and we'll stagger those seams. That way it's not so bulky, it's easier to sew through. Now we'll take it over to the serger and I will sew them on. Let's sew on the cuffs for the sleeve. I'm going to sew in the round, which means my foot will be inside of the sleeve. I'm just going to get all of my raw edges lined up here. I start where my clip is, and then I will gently stretch just the cuff as needed as I sew it around. So I'm going to get a couple stitches in, and then I'm going to adjust. So there's one cuff, and let's just show you what this would look like if I were sewing it and my cardigan was right side out. So now I've turned the sleeve right side out, and you can see here's the cuff on the outside, and I will still sew in the round doing it this way as well. So getting my raw edges lined up, I'm gonna raise my needles. I'm gonna get a couple stitches in, and then I will adjust the fabric and stretch the cuff as needed to sew around. Okay, so my sleeve cuffs are sewn on, and you can see that the one is inside out and the one is right side out, and it all works the same. So yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the neckband. Turn your cardigan right side out, and then we're going to fold it in half, lining up the shoulder seams to find the center back of the neckline. With this cardigan, I'm going to do the exposed seam. If you hold tight, I'm going to show you how to also do the enclosed seam. But for this patriotic looking cardigan, we will do the exposed seam. So grab your neckband. We have already folded in half. We found the center point. If you haven't done that, do that now. And we will line up the center back of the cardigan with the center back of the neckband, right sides together. Next, we'll take the sides of the neckband and we will wrap them down to the bottom of the waistband, right sides together. Make sure that your neckband is not getting twisted. Now, before I take this over to my serger and serge the neckband on, I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to base the very bottom of the neckband in place. That way when I slide it under my serger foot, it won't move. So let's head over there and do that now. I'm just going to baste on my neckband so that this bottom doesn't move when I'm sewing it on. I have a problem with that, so I'm just going to make sure it doesn't happen by tacking it in place. Okay, now I'm ready to go over to my serger and serge my neckband on. We're going to serge the neckband on. This method is the fastest way to sew the neckband on. The seam is exposed. So yeah, just line up the bottom edges here of your neckband and your waistband. I've tacked mine in place. Making sure all of our raw edges are nice and lined up. Our seam is going to go up towards the top of our cardigan. If you're serging, leave your tails long so you can thread this in. Trust me, I like to cut them off flush because I'm lazy, but a nicer finish is to thread these tails in. Okay, so to do the enclosed seam, we're going to start with the cardigan folded in half, center back is marked, the neckband was folded in half, center back was marked in previous steps. So we will pin or clip the neckband to the inside of the cardigan. So we'll have the right side of the neckband on the wrong side of the cardigan. Next, I'll wrap the sides of the neckband down to the bottom of the waistband and clip those in place. Now I'm ready to take it over to my sewing machine and sew. I'm going to sew the neckband on to the wrong side of my cardigan. I'm going to use an 1/8" seam allowance. I'm going to hold my tails as I get started to help prevent nesting. When I get to this seam right here, I'm going to make sure that it's folded up towards the top of my cardigan. You should take it over to your iron and give it a good press. That'll help. So for this step, I'm going to use a 1/4" seam allowance. So I'm gonna get this edge lined up. I'm gonna move my foot back over. And I'm gonna hold my tails as I get started. My foot is at a weird angle, so if my feed dog doesn't move my fabric, I'm gonna have to use a shim. If you find that you're having a hard time getting over humps, make sure that your needle is down and you can make a little shim out of cardboard. And all you do is when you get to the bump, needle down, foot up, and then you insert your shim behind the needle. Okay, now I'm going to take this over to my ironing board and I'm going to press the seam inside of the cardigan, and then I will top stitch the seam on top of the right side of the cardigan. So here's our seam, and we just want to press it so that it's towards the inside. Okay, so I pressed my seam and I'm going to top stitch now. So for top stitching, I like to make my stitch just a little bit longer than what it is right now. And you don't have to top stitch if you don't want to. You could be done. It gets real thick, so but I do recommend at least stitching this part of your seam down because it's thick. You can do that by hand if you want. So I'm just clipping some of these threads out of the way. So my stitch length is longer. It's 3.5 right here. And that is how you do the enclosed seam on the Clear Creek cardigan. I hope you enjoyed this sew along, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.